How's it going, guys? In today's video, we're going to be looking at how we can create this cryptocurrency app in SwiftUI. And at the moment, we have some dummy data and we can adjust the amount of money we want to convert from euros to cryptocurrency. And we also have a search function. So in case we want to look for a cryptocurrency, we can type in Bitcoin and we can find it. And that's actually cool and all, but I'm also going to show you how to fetch data from an API. So we're just going to refresh the app, and this time we're going to use data from an API. So now we have all of the real currencies in the world, and these are real cryptocurrencies. So again, if we go ahead and search for something such as Ethereum, you'll notice down here, we're going to get all of the Ethereum Bitcoin values. And I mean, you might just be interested in Bitcoin, so you type in BTC, and you'll see that 100 euros is worth 0 Bitcoin. But if we increase the amount, we'll find out that 10,000 euros is equal to 0.27 Bitcoin. And there's so many different types of cryptocurrencies to go through, but this project is going to be covering how to create search bars, how we can adjust the pricing, how we can use MVVM to maintain a clean architecture, and also how we can create clean API requests. So in case this data is getting old, of course, you can go ahead and make another API request by clicking on refresh, and it's going to retrieve the data and update the UI. So now we can go through all of the cryptocurrencies again, and currently there's more than 4,000 here, and that's why I had to go ahead and add this search function. So we can type in XRP, which is Ripple, and €1 is 1.36 Ripple. So it's a very simple app, and it's really cool because you can convert from one currency to any other currency. And I'll be showing you how to also choose the currency of your choosing, so it doesn't have to be euro, it can also be USD or rupee, that's up to you. But that's the whole application that we're going to be creating. And let's get started immediately by creating a fresh empty project in Xcode. Now, the very first thing we're going to do is go ahead and create a new SwiftUI file, or just a Swift file actually. And it's going to be a model. It's going to hold the model data for the cryptocurrency. So we're going to call it crypto-model and click on enter. Now, the very first thing I want you to do is go to this coinapi.io and sign up for your free API key. All you have to do is provide an email, and it's going to send you an API key directly to your email and give you 100 free daily requests so that you can use this API for free. And once you have the API key, we can go ahead and close this window and continue with our project. Now, first we're going to start out by creating a struct of crypto, and it's going to conform to the decodable protocol. And the first result we're going to receive through our API request is let asset ID base. So this is the first thing we'll get back of type string. And then we're also going to get some rates back. So let rates be an array of rate. And we need to create this struct of rate, which conforms to decodable and to identifiable, so we can loop through it later with no problems. So let ID first equal a UUID, because the API does not provide this by default. Then go ahead and type in let time be of type string, let the asset underscore ID underscore quotes be of type string, and this is going to tell us whether it's Bitcoin or something else. That's the asset ID. And we need to go ahead and let the rate be of type double. So how much it is in comparison to the base ID. So if we provide the value of euro, it's going to return to us how much Bitcoin there is for €1. Now, for debugging purposes, it's really important we create some preview samples. So here we're going to type in static var sample rates, and this is going to be of type rate. And the reason we're doing this is because 100 API requests is not really that much, and we're going to run out of those really, really fast. So it's good that we use sample data instead of our API data whenever we can. So here we're going to type in var temp rates is going to equal an array of rates, and it's an empty array. Then we're going to type in for whatever in 1 to 20. So we're going to generate 20 samples. We're going to go ahead and create a random number. So random number is going to equal the double of an array of the range of 0 to 1000. And we want to pick a random element from this array each time that we create this variable. So random element, and we need to assert that it's going to be non-nil, which is always going to be the case because random element picks a random element from our array, and it's guaranteed we're going to get a random number back. And under that, we need to go ahead and create some random currencies. So we're going to go ahead and create an array of Bitcoin, Ethereum, something called LOL, which I made up, or maybe it exists, I don't know, and Ripple, which is XRP. And you can even add something else if you want. You can do WTF, and those will be our sample currencies. Then we need to go ahead and create a sample rate, which is going to equal the rate, and inside the rate, we need to provide these parameters. So for time, you can add a random timestamp. I'm just going to do something like that. It doesn't matter. For the asset ID, we can go ahead and add a random currency. And for the rate, we're going to add a random number. Then we want to go ahead and insert into our temporary rates, so temprates.insert, a sample rate at the index of 0. And at the end of this loop, we want to return the temp rates. So again, we're going to generate 20 different sample rates, which are just example rates that we've created. And those are going to be used for debugging purposes. But let's go ahead and find out why Xcode is not happy. And of course, Xcode is not happy because we inserted an array here, when what we really wanted to do is insert a random item from the array. And also, just in case you guys are confused about where I got these asset names from, here is the URL we're going to be making the API request with. Later on, we're going to hand type this, but once you put this into your browser, it's going to give you an asset ID base followed by the rates, which is an array of this over here. And it's very important that they read exactly the same as from the API data. But now that we have a model, I want to go ahead and create a group, and this is going to be for the API because all of this data is going to be relevant to our API. And then we need to go ahead and create another Swift file, and this one's going to be called Crypto API Manager. And this will take care of making the request so that we can put it into our ViewModel and update the UI. So here we're going to click on Create, and we're going to get an empty file like this one. Now to create a request, we're first going to create a class called Crypto API, and the first thing we want to do is define an API key. So API key is going to equal your API key, which in my example is going to be this. You're more than welcome to use it, but chances are it's already reached the max limit, so go ahead and create your own. Otherwise, we can continue and create a function, get crypto data. And we're going to create a parameter called currency, which will be a currency of your choice. It can be rupee, it can be USD, that's up to you. And then we're going to create a preview mode of type Boolean. And preview mode is going to switch between using the API and the debug data. And I want to close the sidebar because we need to type a bit more. And then we need to go ahead and provide a completion listener, which is going to be at escaping because it's going to outlive the function. Even when the function's done, it's still going to make the API request, which means the value that's coming back needs to stay alive, and we can define that by putting at escaping. And what it's going to return to us is a rate as a closure. So those are the basic parameters we need. Next, we need to go ahead and check if it is the preview mode. And if it is the preview mode, we need to go ahead and call the completion listener and immediately return the rate.sampleRates. And this is very important so we don't use our API requests for no reason. And then we need to return out of this function before we cause any more damage. But in case that is set to false, we can go ahead and create a URL string, which is going to be our base URL. And that's going to equal https://rest.coinapi.io/version1/exchange rate/interpolation currency. And this is the currency you want to convert from. So this is just a convenience of being able to change the currency at any time you call this function. And then we need to go ahead and call invert is going to equal false, which means we're translating from euro to Bitcoin and not from Bitcoin to euro, followed by and API key is going to equal \API key. And that's going to take care of the URL. Make sure it's typed exactly the way you see it, because if there's a single typo in here, it's not going to work. Next, we need to actually turn it into a URL object. So guard, if I can spell that, guard let URL equal URL from the string of URL string. And if that goes good, that's cool. Otherwise, we need to print that inside the crypto API there was an invalid URL, and we need to return out of this so we don't cause any more damage. Then the rest is straightforward. We create a URL session .shared.dataTask with a URL. So inside here, we'll type in the URL we just created, and it's going to return to us a tuple of data, response, and error. So we can use those at our leisure. So guard let data equal data, else return. And we can go ahead and copy the print statement from above, paste it inside, and say could not retrieve data. And this usually happens when you don't have internet, so you can make sure to update the UI based on what happens here if there's not an internet connection. Otherwise, if that's a success, that means we do have data, so we can go ahead and type in do let rates data equal try using our JSON decoder or else throw an error. And we're going to decode crypto.self from the data. Then we need to provide a completion listener and call the rates data.rates. Otherwise, we need to catch and print that there was an error. So we're going to copy this line over here, paste it inside, and say \error, so we can find out what went wrong. And we want to provide some default dummy data so the app doesn't just show nothing. And we're just going to add the rate.sampleRates once again. Then we can go down and type in .resume, because we want to make sure that this continues. But that covers everything we have to do in our crypto API manager. So once again, we create an API key that we can use for our URL, and then we create a function that lets us choose a currency and whether this is in preview mode or not. And we also specify that it's going to return a rate at the end of its calculation when it's making the API request, because this is asynchronous, which means 100% we're going to call the function and it's going to terminate before we even get a result. So we had to provide the add escaping to make sure that we get the result back eventually. Then we create a URL string, which gets the currency data from the currency we specify. And here we need to make sure it's actually valid. So we create a URL with this URL string. And then we go ahead and attempt to retrieve the data with URL session. So first we check if there is any data. Otherwise, that means probably there's no internet or something went wrong with the server. And if there is, we go ahead and try to decode that data. And upon completion, we're going to return the rates from the data we've decoded. Otherwise, we're going to just return some sample rates. And it's recommended that you write something went wrong in your UI rather than just responding with some sample rates, or you add some cached data. But for today's lesson, we're just going to keep it simple as this, and we're going to move on to the ContentView model. So up next, we're going to click on ContentView, and we're going to hold Option Command plus N to create a new group, and this is going to be called the Content View. So this is just a group holding the Content View related views. And we also need to go ahead and create a new Swift file, which is of course the ContentView model. And we need to go ahead and import SwiftUI, and we're going to create an extension on ContentView. And inside here, we need to go ahead and create a class called ViewModel, which will conform to the observable object protocol. And we need to create some published variables, such as the rates, which will change over time. And that's going to equal an array of rates. And at published var search text, which needs to take care of the search functionality. That will be set to nothing initially. And at published var amount, which is how much of the currency do we want to provide. And the initial value will be set to 100 euros. And this is going to reflect on the currency you decide to pick. Now, the first thing we want to do is create a function that refreshes the data. And I'm going to call it refresh data. And this is also going to be responsible for fetching data from the API request. So you can also call this fetch data if you want. I just named it refresh data because I thought it was fitting that every time we use this function, it refreshes the data on our UI. So here we're going to type in crypto API, and we need to initialize that so that we can use get crypto data for the currency of euro, and preview mode is going to be set initially to true. Now for the closure, we can delete the last parameter and open it up and create a variable called new rates in, and we can now use that freely. So here we need to go ahead and create a dispatch queue on the main thread.async because we're updating the UI. And with the animation, we're going to go ahead and assign to rates the new rates. And since this is a published variable, this is going to be updated as soon as it receives the new values. And if everything went good, we can go ahead and print successfully got new rates. And here we're going to go ahead and type in self.rates.count. Then another function we need is something called filtered rates. So filtered rates, which is going to be of type rate, is going to return to us the search text. If it's equal to nothing, we're just going to return back the rates. Otherwise, we need to filter these rates because we want to get the text that we provide in the search bar. So here we're going to type in rates.filter and we're going to open up a closure in here. So we're going to use the 0 with the $, dot asset ID quotes, dot contains, and I'm just going to close the sidebar to make some more space. So inside here, we need to provide the search text dot uppercased. And actually I messed up. This is supposed to be a variable, not a function. So this is a computed variable and we can just put that above the refresh data. So this will be updated live as soon as the search text changes. And right below that, we can go ahead and create a function called calculate rate. And it's going to take a rate of type rate, which will return a double. And here we need to return the amount, which is the amount the user enters, times the rate dot rate. So by default, the API returns the rate of €1 to Bitcoin, which of course is not significant enough to see any change in the Bitcoin. So what we want is a bar we can drag to change the amount that can modify the rate we're looking at. So that means we can provide €1,000 and it will give us the rate back for €1,000. So it's a very quick conversion function. But after we've put that into place, we can go ahead and modify our content view. So inside here, the very first thing we want to do is go ahead and create our view model. So to do that, we need to go ahead and create @state objects private var VM is going to equal the view model that we've just created. And we're going to replace this with a navigation view. So navigation view followed by a VStack. Now we can take care of the navigation title immediately. So navigation title, which will be called iCrypto. And let's close this sidebar. And it's going to have a toolbar with the content of toolbar item, which is going to hold a button that says refresh with the action set to vm.refreshData. And we also want to provide an onAppear function for this VStack. So as soon as it appears, we're going to go ahead and perform the action of vm.refreshData. So go ahead and run the application now just to make sure that everything we've done until now is working. And if your app compiles, great, you've copied perfectly. So the next step is to check whether our API request is working. And you may have noticed that when you run the app, you're going to successfully get 20 new rates. And if you click on refresh, you'll get 20 more, which means we're successfully generating those items. And if we open the sidebar and go to our content.viewModel, you can see we're also in preview mode, which means we're only getting the sample rates. But now go ahead and change that to false, and you should get the amount of rates in the API. So if you actually get a number there, that means everything's working perfectly and we can move on. So the good news is that we successfully got new rates and there's 4,652, which means we successfully called the data from the API. And that also means we can move on to actually creating the UI for it. So go ahead and change this to true once again. It's very important you leave it in true for the preview mode because we only have 100 requests once again, and those disappear incredibly fast. So inside the content view, we can go ahead and continue and close the sidebar. So inside the content view, we're going to go ahead and create another VStack. And inside this VStack, we want to create a stepper with the amount, which is set to the integer value of the view model dot amount in euros. And it also needs a value, which is going to be a binding value of vm.amount. Plus we need a step of 100 so they can easily jump up and down. Then right below that, we're going to create a slider with the value set to vm.amount. So you can also control the value through this slider. And we're going to add some padding down here. Although it's important you specify the range. So in the range of 1 to, let's say, 10,000, they can choose how much they want to add. And right below the VStack, all we have to do now is create a list of the currencies. So inside here, vm.filtered rates, so we can get the filtered rates back. And we're going to type in item in, and we need to create an H stack for each one of our currencies. So the H stack is going to hold a text of item.asset ID quote, and it's going to be .bold. So you can already go ahead and trigger the live preview, and you'll see that the sample data is going to load into your menu. And then we can just click on stop and continue. Then we need to provide a spacer, so spacer. And we also need to go ahead and provide some text that says euro \vm.calculate rates for the item, which is of type rate. And we need to give it a specifier, which is going to be 2 decimal places. So %.2f. Now you're going to notice that we'll also get numbers on the right with 2 decimal places. And we can edit it by moving this back and forth. We can click on plus and minus. But there's still one thing missing, and that is our searchable bar. So let's go ahead and close that and add the search bar. So on the list, we're going to go ahead and first add a list style of .plain, and then we're going to go ahead and provide the searchable modifier, which takes a vm.searchText as a parameter. Now the search bar is going to appear, and we can rerun the application and test it out. So inside here, let's pretend we want to go ahead and find everything that has to do with a W. So you can see WTF, and you can write it in any way you want. It can be uppercase, it can be lowercase, and it's still going to find it. Or you can do something such as R, and it'll find XRP. So that part's working, and the final thing to test out is whether it works with the real data. So go ahead and change the preview mode to false and rerun your application. And you'll notice that all of the cryptocurrencies have loaded successfully in our application. And we can actually look for them. So we can type in XRP and we'll find Ripple down here. And of course, there's a lot of them. I mean, there's actually a ton of them. So it's good that we have the search functionality so we can find exactly what we're looking for. And once again, it doesn't have to be lowercase or uppercase. It's going to convert it automatically since everything is uppercase, and it's going to find it for us. But now that we're at Bitcoin and it's set to 0, we can try to increase the amount to, let's say, to around 5,000. And you'll notice that 5,000 euros is only 0.14 Bitcoin. And I just noticed a small bug in my code, and that is that there's euro symbols on all of these. So let's go ahead and change that in our content view. We can go ahead and remove that by taking it away from here on the calculate rate, because we're not returning the value in euros anymore. We're calculating it in euros, but we only want to get the amount back in the currency that's provided down here. So again, if we go ahead and type in Bitcoin, it's going to say 0.0 or 0.17, depending on how much you decide to add. And we can also decide to refresh this data. And it's going to fetch new API results. But anyways, guys, that's actually all I wanted to cover in today's video. As you can see, we managed to create a whole project using MVVM, and it's quite clean. I mean, everything's in our ViewModel, so we can easily access that without having to create too much functionality in the UI. So everything's quite clean and maintainable, and I really hope you enjoyed this project. But as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.